Morning, Rick.
Morning, Andrew. It's not as cold as the other morning.
It's actually really nice, and I'm very overdressed for it, which I'll pay for later. So today we're back in Ottawa again, which is a nice thing to do, and we're going to be taking a walking tour of all the stuff that most people don't know anything about.
Absolutely. You're going to wonder about the framing here, but that was my choice. And it's because most people, as you know, take a picture of Maman, the spider here, with the Parliament buildings behind. That's the typical tourist picture, or hanging onto the legs or whatnot, but we thought we'd frame this picture and title it The Attack of the Atheist Spiders. It sort of, I don't know, it sort of works. The reason why we're actually standing here, and we have the Basilica behind us. It's Basilica, the Notre Dame Basilica is the oldest Catholic church in Ottawa, in Bytown. And, but that was not the original church. The original church is actually right about where we're standing. The original church was called La Paroisse Saint-Jacques, so the Saint-Jacques, l'Église Saint-Jacques. And l'Église Saint-Jacques translated is St. James Church. So in Wrightstown you had St. James Church, which was Anglican. Yeah. And in Bytown you had the St. James Church that was Catholic.
I knew there would be a connection.
My great-great-grandfather and grandmother got married in l'Église Saint-Jacques. So neat. That was Andrew Leamy and Eric Sena.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So where are we heading to next?
We are going on a walk. It's going to take us all around the Parliament precinct, essentially, and we're going to start with a little bit of talking about the river, because that's where we're going to next. Is that beautiful scene looking over the Ottawa River with Parliament Hill and the Pean Point and the Chaudière Falls. It's going to be nice.
Excellent. Let's go.
Let's go.
So our first stop is Tavern on the Hill. It's right behind us here, or right behind where you are actually. And the National Gallery is up here. And if you look down here, you can see the entranceway to the first portage that we mentioned in our video about the first portage. So what's the significance of here? We're going to talk about the river. The view. And I mean, obviously the Ottawa River, the mighty Ottawa River, and the escarpments here. This is quite the scene, to say the very least. So I'm going to start with the Ottawa River itself, the name. And when you get right down to it, Andrew, of course it's the Ottawa River, la rivière des Outaouais, as it is in French. Now, Outaouais is not what any Indigenous person ever called the river. Okay. They got that wrong because of the weird kind of spelling that happened in France in the early days of New France, that they didn't have a W in the alphabet, so they used an 8. Huh. So it was 8. Ta, 8, wa. And so that got translated somehow to Outaouais. Weird. But the a lexicologist from the 19th century actually said, let us call it what it was always called, and not Outaouais, because that is a misnomer. That being said, it is La Rivière des Outaouais in French now. Nobody's trying to change it. But the name, when you consider, first of all, the Anishinaabe name is, as most people know, Kichisibi. Kichisibi is the Grand River, La Grande Rivière, or the Great River. And it was simply a way of saying that this is the great river, that the superhighway that takes you into the interior, into the northwest, that was used for millennia. So that was one name. The other name was the name that Champlain gave it, which was La Rivière des Algonquins. So he sort of heard Algonquin, and he came out as Algonquin in his reports, and I guess the name has stuck ever since. But it locates the river perfectly. So you have Kichisibi, basically describes the river well. For Champlain, La Rivière des Algonquins locates it in its proper territory. But then we have Ottawa. And where does Ottawa come from? Well, at a time when there were fur wars going on here, where there was a push and pull in the fur trade, you had an Ottawa River that was very dangerous to travel on. Yeah. People went up and down quickly. So there was very few people living by its shores. And the people who were trading the most with the French were the Ottawa people. Yeah. And they came from Georgian Bay. So the river became known as the Ottawa River, or the La Rivière des Outaouais, because it's basically the French traders said, well, this is the river that trade is done with the Ottawa. But the word Ottawa in Anishinaabe simply means he trades or she trades. So
Kitchissippi, it describes it perfectly. Rivière des Algonquins, its location, and Ottawa should have never made the list.
So what's the connection then to the Ottawa people who out of Michigan, and there's a town called Ottawa in Michigan. How does that connect to it?
Well, territory is very large, so the Ottawa people, they're all part of the same nation.
Okay.
And so essentially that is, and they were principally centered on Manitoulin Island and Georgian Bay.
Okay.
But then you also have the nation, and the territory is quite vast around the Great Lakes.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, off to the next one.
Yes.
So that was a quick change up. We've just moved over a couple of meters actually. And behind me you can see Nepean Point, where Champlain normally stands. And the Anishinaabe Scout is usually in this little bush here. Both are missing at the moment because there's a renovation being done, which will take a couple of years.
Statues are being cleaned, I'm told.
Oh, really?
Yes, apparently.
That's a nice way of saying it, I guess.
Nepean Point was originally called Bluff Point because there was nothing on it. It was a wild place, and the same as Parliament Hill, of course. But of course, you had Champlain standing in a very prominent, the most prominent spot, I think, in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful location. And Champlain, of course, at one point had an Anishinaabe Scout standing at his feet. So the two statues were juxtaposed with Champlain and his astrolabe standing in that very, very prominent spot. And of course, the Anishinaabe Scout in a very subservient position. In the 1990s, people began to get more upset about it, and a campaign had the Anishinaabe Scout removed, and eventually they relocated him right here.
Yeah.
So he was actually sitting on a pedestal right here amongst this wild area that looked like Indian grass, I suppose, and he was looking up towards Champlain. Now Champlain gets the prominent spot, but one needs to ask, how does that happen? I don't know why Champlain, a man who's only been here 4 days, gets to have the most prominent spot in all of Ottawa, and the Anishinaabe Scout is put here amongst the weeds on this low spot looking up toward Champlain. So a lot of people said it was because of the controversy that, well, they had to move and this was a more natural spot. But I don't think that's what it was, Andrew. I think, quite frankly, the Anishinaabe Scout is sitting here hiding, awaiting to ambush so that he can get the prominent spot someday.
I think that would be a good idea. Again, we didn't have to move too far. We're right in front of what here?
This is the foundation to what was Colonel By's house on the hill. And as most people would know, this is in Major's Hill Park.
Yeah.
But it was Colonel By. Major?
Yeah.
Like, why? Well, when Colonel By finished the canal, there was a huge cost overrun. And the fact of the matter is he was recalled to London, and so sadly, they excoriated him. The new government was there, and they were elected on saving money. And so they really took him to the boards completely, and he basically died a disgraced man. So the man who took up his command was Major Bolton. And that is why this is called Major's Hill Park instead of Colonel's Hill Park.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So did that have anything to do with why they also stripped the name of Bytown and changed it to something else, or is that unrelated?
No, it's unrelated because it became Bytown and started as a joke, as a matter of fact. His officers were sitting around a table having a little too much rum, I guess, and they started calling it Bytown and Bytown, and it stuck. And so it became Bytown until the town became incorporated as a city and became the city of Ottawa.
has always been one of my favorite buildings, the Baytown Museum, because it's one of the oldest buildings in the entire city, and I assume it was probably built sometime close to 1826, because that was when the canal started being built. And it was used, was it used just for provisioning, or is it also an office for the work being done?
This building is built right across from us, right across the canal.
Yeah.
And this was the Commissariat. So this is the building that is used, basically a storage.
Yeah.
And I think there might have been also cots for the enlisted men,
Yes.
and the officers, I should say, would be possibly sleeping upstairs. But across the way was the commissioner's building, and that was where he not only lived, but it was his office.
So that building that went up to where the tracks ended up being.
That's it exactly, and you can see an outline of the building, but they had to tear it down once the train started passing.
Yes. Oh, that's why they tore it down.
It cracked all the walls and everything else, so that's why they tore it down, because of the trains.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and it was identical to this building.
Yeah, I like how you can see Colonel By looking over the edge there towards the building too.
Exactly.
Up there, it's.
Yeah.
I'll put a
There's a
little
rumor that they actually tore the building down so that Colonel By and his wife could sit with their lounging chairs. And
Oh, those Adirondack chairs?
Yeah.